This is the second in our series of Norwich's Victoria Cross heroes. For the first presentation, please follow the link on screen. Although the events we are talking about today took place before those detailed in the former presentation. Wilfred Edwards was born on the 16th of February 1893 in Vauxhall Street, Norwich, to Charles and Kate Fox. Both his parents were in the tailoring business, and they had married the year before at St Clement's Chapel, Norwich. The couple would have 5 children, including Wilfred. But sadly, as was common during this time, not all survived through infancy. They would lose 2 very young, leaving Wilfred the only boy in a family with 2 sisters named Kate and Amy. It is unclear what happened to the Foxes' marriage, but it wouldn't last long. By 1901, Kate and her children had moved from Norwich to the city of Leeds in West Yorkshire, where both she and her children were going by her maiden name of Edwards. His father would also move from Norwich, first to Kent, before heading north to Yorkshire himself, where he remarried and had 4 children. In Leeds, Wilfred attended Park Lane Council School, before becoming a tailor himself for a while, but when work began to dry up, he left the profession in summer 1914 to work as a miner in the Waterloo Main Colliery. His time as a miner would be a short one. The First World War would break out shortly after, and Wilfred was soon compelled, along with 10 others from the colliery, to join in the Great Adventure, as many saw it. He enlisted on the 4th of September 1914. His training took place at Albahira Barracks, Aldershot. On the 20th of February 1915, he married Belinda Timlin at Mount St Chapel's Church, Leeds, who was a press feeder in a printing firm and a munitions worker during the war. He first sailed for France on the 26th of August 1915 with the 7th Battalion, the King's Own Yorkshire Light Infantry, and by the end of October he had returned to Britain, to Hoddleston Military Hospital, Rose Hill, Herefordshire, having been wounded. Recovering, he returned to the front in February 1916, but was wounded again in July and sent back to recover in Colchester, Essex, until January 1917. The action that would lead to his Victoria Cross came on the 16th of August 1917 at Langemarck, Belgium, during the Third Battle of Ypres, or Passchendaele as it is also known. Fought around the Belgian towns of Ypres and the village of Passchendaele, a battle made famous by the conditions it was fought in. A few days after the start of the battle, on the 31st of July 1917, the rain began, the worst rain the area had seen in 30 years. The area already flooded easily, being below sea level, but with the canals and drainage ditches smashed to oblivion by artillery fire, the battlefield soon became nothing but mud. Trenches and dugouts flooded, and in some areas, men were at as much a risk of drowning as they were bullets. It was the first day of the fighting at Langemarck. The 7th Battalion had been given the task of capturing an enemy position located to their front. As they advanced on the objective, Private Edwards and his company came under heavy fire from a concrete blockhouse next to the trenches being used as a machine gun position. The torrent of machine gun and rifle fire soon led to all the officers leading the company being killed or wounded. The attack halted and was close to breaking. With the company pinned down, Private Edwards rushed on alone, throwing Mills bombs, hand grenades, through the loopholes, silencing the bunker. He then climbed on top of the blockhouse, exposing himself to any snipers in the area, and began calling for and waving for the rest of the company to advance. As they did, the surviving troops of the blockhouse came out and surrendered to Edwards, some 30 men and 3 officers. He would spend the rest of the day acting as a runner and guided most of his battalion through difficult ground. Initially, he was thanked by his commanding officer for his fine behaviour, and as far as he knew, this was all the acclaim his action would ever earn him. He even wrote to his wife, telling his frustration that other men in his battalion and regiment were receiving honours while he was not. There had already been 4 VCs earned by the regiment during the First World War, 3 to members of the 2nd Battalion and 1 to the 10th. But Wilfred's actions had been duly noted, and soon his own VC was on the way. When his VC was announced in papers in Leeds, his wife was swamped with reporters, forcing her to tell them that she had no idea what he had done to earn it. The citation of his Victoria Cross in the London Gazette, the official paper of record in Britain, and the paper that all Victoria Crosses are announced in, read, "The most conspicuous bravery when under heavy machine gun and rifle fire from a strong concrete fort. Having lost all his company officers, without hesitation he dashed forward at great personal risk, bombed through the loopholes, surmounted the fort, and waved his company to advance. By his example, he saved a most critical situation at a time when a whole battalion was held up and a leader was needed. 3 officers and 30 other ranks were taken prisoner by him in the fort. Later, Private Edwards did his most valuable work as a runner. He eventually guided most of the battalion through very difficult ground. Throughout, he set a splendid personal example to all and is utterly regardless of danger. He received his Victoria Cross from King George V on the 26th of September 1917 on the forecourt of Buckingham Palace. His was the 862nd Victoria Cross awarded. For a man who had charged a bunker single-handed and acted so bravely under fire, Wilfred was rather overcome by his nerves meeting the king and forgot to salute, something the king took in good humour and was amused by the entire situation. On the 10th of October 1917, he returned to Leeds and was given a hero's welcome upon his entry into Victoria Square, where he received a cheque for £200 that had been raised by the public and a silver watch as a gift from his old school. Of the Victoria Cross recipients during the First World War, 12 of them called Leeds their home, leading some in the city to claim it as the bravest place in Britain. His actions would also see him promoted from the ranks to that of an officer. In December 1917, he was commissioned as a second lieutenant and began his officer training, before joining the 4th Battalion of the King's Own Yorkshire Light Infantry, where he remained to the end of the war and into June 1919, when he was forced to relinquish his commission due to ill health caused by his war wounds. Although, upon leaving the army, he was assessed to be 60% disabled, Wilfred went back to his pre-war job of a coal miner, before moving on to work in the Leeds Gas Department's showrooms. Due to his war wounds, Wilfred and Belinda were unable to have children, but they did go on to adopt 2 daughters, Winifred in 1927 and Valerie in 1936. Sadly, very little is known about Wilfred's life between the wars. Wilfred was called back into service during the Second World War, granted a regular Army Emergency Commission in the Royal Army Ordnance Corps at the rank of lieutenant on the 2nd of January 1941. He was later promoted to temporary captain in 1944. At the end of the war, he was placed in charge of running a Ford factory in Germany and had rose to the rank of major, until he was finally demobilised again. A civilian once again, his working life was spent in an accountant's and working in a factory in Yorkshire. In 1950, he was granted the freedom of Leeds, and here, once again, he disappears into some obscurity, until on the 2nd of January 1972, aged 78, Wilfred passed away in the St James Hospital, Leeds. He is buried in the Upper and Lower Wortley Cemetery, Leeds. At the time of his death, he was the last surviving member of the King's Own Yorkshire Light Infantry to win a Victoria Cross during the First World War. He left his Victoria Cross to York Castle Museum in his will, but his other medals, the 1914-15 Star, the British War Medal 1914-1920, the Victory Medal 1914-1919, the Defence Medal 1939-1945, the War Medal 1939-1945, George VI's Coronation Medal for 1937, and the Queen Elizabeth Coronation Medal for 1953, can be found in the King's Own Yorkshire Light Infantry Museum, Doncaster. In 2017, on the 100th anniversary of his Victoria Cross action, Wilfred Edwards was commemorated with a memorial paving slab, both in the city of his birth of Norwich and at the War Memorial in Ormley Park, Leeds. The Leeds Memorial was unveiled by descendants of Edwards. The service in Norwich was held on the same day that the memorial slab for Sydney Day was laid. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. All of the information and pictures used can be found in the description below. This was Norwich's Victoria Cross Heroes, Wilfred Edwards. And this was a little bit of history.